How we doing, everybody? It's Wardy here, and it is late night on the East Coast at the time this video first dropping, as we have plenty of Mets news, rumblings, and news to get into. That being right around midnight, December 4th, Thursday, 2025, and I'm dropping this now because there's a strong likelihood I'm going to have another video and or live stream to do later on today here, technically on this Thursday. But in the meantime, let's break down what you guys need to know. It's headlined by the fact that, yes, as a surprise to absolutely nobody, the Mets still want Luis Robert even after they did everything in their power to try to land him at the trade deadline. But the White Sox are saying we need a top pitching prospect. The Mets said, yeah, I got a bridge to sell you. What is the current value of Luis Robert in this trade market? How much has it changed since the trade deadline? Why did the Mets covet him so much there? Whereas a lot of Mets fans, including myself to a certain degree, don't love the idea of Robert in this Mets outfield. We'll talk about all the pros, the cons, and everything in between that comes with Lou Bob making that nice sliding catch that you guys saw there beside me, and maybe a nice little hit there too up the middle. Point stance, Mets like Robert a lot more than maybe what you guys initially thought, and we'll get into ultimately why that is. From there, we'll talk about what it may take to actually land Robert, as Luis Acuna may be one of the players the Mets find themselves parting ways with. We'll get into all this reporting where it initially stems from, and ultimately, again, the likelihood of this trade happening. From there, we'll also talk about Freddy Peralta continued. We broke him down plenty on the platform as a premier trade candidate for the New York Mets this offseason. Well, now it's been made abundantly clear the Brewers are shopping, and Peralta's name is absolutely one that's more than likely going to be parted with. We'll get into more on Freddy and where things stand with the Brewers. We'll also talk about Eugenio Suarez, who might just be the DH pickup the Mets have been looking for entering the 2026 season. We'll talk about the pros and cons that come with someone like him and what that would mean for someone in Pete Alonso should Suarez actually land in Flushing, Queens. And also how Devin Williams did not hold back from talking some smack on the Yanks and their fans specifically. We'll get into that to kickstart the show, everybody. So all I ask is that you guys hit that like and subscribe button on your way in. Let me know all your initial reactions, thoughts, and analysis in the comments down below. And as always, shout out to our amazing sponsors that makes every single show here happen at SeatGeek, that has you covered for all of your ticketing needs. Use my promo code WARDY10, that is WARDY10, so that way you too can save 10% off your next ticket purchase, whether you need it for concerts, comedy shows, NBA tickets. My Knicks are rolling right now. We're just going to disregard that terrible loss at TD against those Celtics a couple nights ago. Look at the NHL. Rangers, Devils, Islanders, what have you, NFL, whatever you want, and the sports ticketing space, our friends at SeatGeek have you covered. WARDY10 for 10% off your next ticket purchase. Now, folks, let's deviate away from these Robert highlights because we have a lot to talk about with him today. And let's first begin our conversation, folks. I think it's a perfect opener to begin our elongated conversation in the sense of we're going to have plenty of things to talk about in this one. And it's not going to be that article that you guys see there. We'll come back to it. No, we're here to talk about the following. This was from Devin Williams' Instagram himself today, everybody. I'm not joking. From himself. States the following. For a bunch of people that didn't want me back on your team, y'all sure are mad in the DMs. What did Devin Williams just said? He said, Yanks fans, you guys are hypocritical schmucks, is what he's saying. So you talk down on me, you give me death threats and everything imaginable when I, of course, was on your team and didn't perform well my first couple weeks, but of course dominating the second half. Didn't give up a home run for my 20-plus appearances entering postseason play, but that's all disregarded now that I decided to go to the New York Mets instead of returning to the Bronx. Because let's not forget this. The Yankees had an appetite to bring Devin Williams back. They showed interest and wanted to bring Devin Williams back. But Devin Williams said, no, thank you very much. I'm going to take $45+ million with $6 million bonus, 15 years per, with $5 million deferred to land with the New York Mets on a 3-year contract. All while knowing I may very well not even be the closer for the New York Mets. So what does this tell you, everybody? Exactly what we are not surprised to see. Yankees fans going to continue to Yankees fans. And the most hilarious thing is that I quoted this on X and said, that's right, Devin, talk that smack. These people just yapping for the sake of yapping. And I had Yankees fans going off on me, calling me a bunch of heinous things, which I find hilarious because it further reaffirms Devin Williams' exact point. You guys are never going to be satisfied when it comes to a player that first did not perform well, even if they settle down in the end, because if you ever decide to go to a crosstown rival, you will always be dead to Yankees fans, at least to the ones that go out of their way to message you in your personal DMs to tell you how much they love you. And of course, it means sarcastic with that last part there, but the point stands. I think Devin Williams is happy to no longer be a New York Yankee, and Yanks fans, please continue to act the way that you do, because I assure you, all you are doing is increasing the likelihood of top players in not wanting to go there or not wanting to return there. First was Juan Soto. Then it was Devin Williams. Is Cody Bellinger going to be next? I guess we'll just have to wait and see. But now, folks, let's get into this discussion. Like I said, plenty to break down in this one. But let's start with the conversation as to why you likely clicked on this video. And why you guys probably clicked on this video goes in hand with the following. Then let's go ahead and pull up here. We're going to break down both aspects of this. All shout out to my guy, Michael Marino, there on X. For those that don't know Michael's been doing a fantastic job as an independent MLB reporter each of the past 3.5, 4 years now. There's some people that aren't too versed with Marino and his credibility, and they still think that he's someone who is not as prominent as he is. I assure you, everybody, Michael has his sources. I know him on a personal level. There's a lot of things I can't even say publicly, but I promise you, Michael is well connected, and he has broken news plenty of times over the years. Not only did he have one of the first scoops this offseason, mind you, regarding how it took Nimmo multiple days over the weekend, mind you, to actually make his decision to waive his no-trade clause to join the Texas Rangers and pair back with guys like Jacob deGrom. But just to throw him a bone, one of the key pieces that Michael Marino actually had over the past couple of years was breaking the official news of Chad Green signing with the Toronto Blue Jays. And at that time, he was still rehabbing from injury, so it kind of got swept under the rug because Green did not impact the club all that much in his first year after signing that contract. But the point stands, Michael has his sources, one of the more credible people in the game versus some of the other schmucks that you see out there on X. So when he says stuff, I'm most certainly going to believe him. And as you guys can see here, Michael Marino states the following: sources, Mets have shown interest in White Sox center fielder Luis Robert this offseason. Nothing is believed to be close or imminent, but I've been told the White Sox in the past have circled Luis Acuna as a player of interest in a potential Robert trade. So let's break down every aspect of this all, and then we'll get into his latter comments that you see down below regarding one Eugenio Suarez. But let's begin here with one Luis Robert, because this is a player that we have talked about extensively on the platform each of the past 3.5, 4 years now. If you guys have been longtime followers of WardyNYM, in which I really appreciate all you guys that were sending me your screenshots of your YouTube wrap-up recap, looking at the top channels that you've watched throughout the year, had a lot of you guys on X tagging me as I was your #1 stop for Mets content. So thank you guys so much for that. I really do appreciate it. But to break down more on Robert, everybody, if you guys have been followers on the platform for at least a couple years now, then you know that I've been beating this drum for a while now. And there's a difference between, of course, talking about players that the Mets are connected to and actively going out of my way to reaffirm why I think Robert would be such a seamless fit for the New York Mets. And this goes all the way back to, of course, when he had that breakout 2023 season for the White Sox. And that's what the Mets would be looking for to a degree if they actually landed Robert and his services. Because I understand, you look at the stats down below, you look at Robert, who's owed $20 million for the 2026 season. You look at a guy who had just 110 games played because he has struggled to stay on the field each of the past couple of years. 52 runs scored, 14 home runs, 53 RBIs, 33 stolen bases. Not a terrible line at all, but then when you look at the 223 average, the 297 on base, the 364 slug, we're looking at 84 WRC plus, so right around 16% below league average as a batter. At least a bit to be desired. And I do not fault any Mets fan whatsoever for saying, Wardy, listen, if we can only land one outfielder, I don't want Luis Robert to be that guy. Because if I'm being transparent, I too fall in that category. And that's why we have to break down the pros and the cons and why it would make logical sense to trade for Luis Robert. But let's start with the obvious, okay? Luis Robert is coming off of back-to-back down offensive seasons for the White Sox. Now, mind you, in 2023, that's where he completely changed the game, where he had 38 home runs, a monster season, and was a star, both offensive and defensive player, looking like a blossoming of one of the best pure outfielders in baseball. So why is Robert completely fallen off a cliff, it seemed, over the past couple of years? It's not just due to injury, which has played a factor, but the most notorious factor is look at who he's playing for. Look at the lineup, look at the location. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out that when you're in Southside Chicago, the idea of a player, even while getting the millions of dollars that they get on their salary, it's easier said than done to get up every single day in a 162 and play for a team that you know from the start of the season is never going to go anywhere. The White Sox are horrendous. They're piss poor. And mind you, in that breakout year for Luis Robert, they had 61 wins that year. But that's something that he would be dying for right now, an example, because this is the same Luis Robert that in 2022, when he was continuing to blossom, was part of a 500 ball club for the White Sox that actually had some competency from the depth of their lineup to their rotation. They unfortunately fell off a cliff entirely as they entered that 2023 season, but Robert stayed afloat. So even though that they had some of the boppers in the lap, again, few and far between with guys like Jake Berger with over 20 home runs that year. You had guys like Andrew Vaughn, of course, contributing among others. Outside that, there wasn't all that much to be happy about if you were a White Sox fan. Robert was the lone exception. He is not only an elite base runner, he's not only an elite defender when he is right, but he can be an elite batter for you when everything is clicking. But each of the past 2 years between injuries, inconsistencies, and honestly, being a part of such a piss-poor lineup, Robert has really struggled to find that emotion, find that motivation on a daily basis, which is why we have seen things in the past where Robert struggling, of course, just to jog out groundouts to first. Why? Because he's miserable. Can you blame the guy for being miserable? Yes, I know it's not a great sell job on wanting to bring a guy to Flushing, Queens when he's struggling to be motivated, but the point stands. If Robert goes from a Chicago White Sox organization to a New York Mets team that's looking to contend for playoffs and hopefully a championship next season, and a lineup night and day versus what he's been a part of throughout his career, you really don't think he's going to thrive? You really don't think the bat's going to start to bounce back while getting more pitches a hit than he's ever had in his career before? You really don't think that's going to happen? I got a bridge to sell you. If Robert gets traded to any contending team this offseason, he is going to bounce back. And you want to know why I'm confident in this? One of the top contending teams that has been seeking Robert and his services each of the past 2 years, regardless of his injury, is, yes, the LA Dodgers. If the Dodgers land Robert, do you think any fan out there is going to go out of their way to say how that was a bad move by LA? Of course not. But God forbid the Mets are in the same breath of a player coming off of back-to-back down offensive seasons. And I get it. I'm not trying to sell you here on why Robert is a slam dunk upgrade over WardyNYM, because that's far from it. Robert is a far greater defender. We all know that. Far greater base runner right now. This is all true, but offensively, he has to go out and prove himself, which is why the idea of landing Robert, in my opinion, is palatable as long as he is not the only outfielder you are adding this offseason. And my exception, that is, if Robert is your sole outfielder, and let's say hypothetically Carson Bench cracks his team out of camp and he's starting left and Robert's in center, which is how it would go because Robert is a superior center fielder. Everyone believes that Carson Bench can profile okay in center, but is destined to do better in, say, the corner outfield. So should that be the case, and should the Mets make sure that Bench, their top outfield prospect, is not blocked heading into next season because, say, he dominates in spring training, and I love Bench. I'm all for Bench getting reps next season. Let me make that clear. But what's also true is that I, as a fan, cannot stomach the idea of Robert being the lone outfield acquisition, and shout out to Outdoor Boys for popping that up. I love those guys so much on YouTube. I'm sure you guys do too. If you know, you know. But the point stands. I'm all for Robert as long as either A, you add another outfielder, or B, you make sure that you supplement the offense that you may potentially still be losing in Nimmo somewhere in the infield, like going after a true designated hitter to pair with hopefully an Alonso reunion, even though I can understand how that might be a little counterintuitive because if you bring Alonso back, you want him to get more DH reps. There are players out there, however, that can give you DH reps, give you reps at the hot corner, or give you reps all over the outfield as well, and split time there with, say, Alonso, and that is Cody Bellinger. That's why I think Bellinger is such a seamless fit for this team. He can play all aspects of the outfield. You can have Belly as someone who can platoon time at first base, and for the time he's at first, you have Alonso at DH, and for the times that Alonso is at first base, you can have someone else at DH and have Bellinger there in the outfield where he's more proficient. Then you could give Juan Soto a day or two off there and have him play DH instead of right field where Bellinger can comfortably handle it because he is a superior defender. Point stands. I like Robert in certain circumstances. I, however, do think that the Mets would be moving lateral in a role where you acquire Robert. You're banking on Bench when there's a lot of uncertainty with your top prospects still and a win now stage for the Mets, and you say move lateral at best for your infield. That is where I will have a problem here. So for me personally, I love the idea of Robert as your stopgap option. And what I mean by that is, should you say acquire a Cody Bellinger, who I think would be the best fit of the bunch if you landed Robert and still want to go after an outfield type because of his ability to play the infield at first base, that being Bellinger. Kyle Tucker would be fantastic, but again, if you land Tucker, he's going to be your right fielder. You're going to shift Soto to left, and Robert's going to be your center fielder. Love that on paper, but where does Carson Bench find himself getting playing time? And that is where you have a bit of a divide then, because then if Bench proves himself, is there a role where Robert could lose his job? Absolutely. If Robert's bat doesn't transition, there is a world where he could just be a short stopgap option for Bench. Then by halfway through the season, then Robert gets more playing time either off the bench or more in the DH position, platooning time with Alonso. It might not feel like the best fit given Robert's surplus of great defensive value, but for the sake of having the best lineup out there, that is a route that they could go down. But why would the Mets go out of their way to trade for Luis Robert at $20 million average annual value to just have him lose his job the first month or two into the season? Again, I see both sides of the coin as to why it would and wouldn't make sense. All I'm trying to tell you guys is that should the Mets trade for Robert, there is logical reasoning as to why that they would be doing that, and they are going in direct hand with the fact of how much we know he's a clear change of scenery candidate. I'm not saying that he's going to go ahead and look like an MVP player like he did in 2023, but what I am saying is that you should expect him to, at minimum, be a league average bat, a superior defender to say the least, that'll look fantastic in center, and a guy that can steal bags for you. If he got 33 last season, he can easily get 40 in this Mets lineup. No doubt in my mind whatsoever. I'm really bullish on Robert as a bounce back candidate because, again, if he was with a top contending team and performing in this similar stature, I wouldn't be saying these things. But that has not been the case. He's been part of literally one of, if not the worst organization in baseball each of the past couple years, which has led to his lack of success. And you simply cannot try to sway me otherwise. And now to talk a little bit more here on Robert, as you guys can take a look at his baseball savant page, leaves a little bit to be desired. Nothing too crazy, but also not terrible either for a guy that was 16% above league average. He was 87th percentile in fielding value, 72nd in base running value, right around league average in XWOBA, expected batting average, expected slugging, average exit velocity, above league average in barrel percentage, just below league average on hard hit percentage, above league average and sweet spot percentage, 92nd percentile and bat speed, which is awesome. But here's what lies the problem. Robert has been swinging at literally everything, and he has definitely struggled when looking at breaking balls and off-speed pitches. So, a guy, what is Robert at your worst? He's still a clear upgrade over Tyrone Taylor, and that is not an exaggeration. Robert, without a doubt, is an upgrade over Tyrone Taylor, but is he without a doubt an upgrade over Brandon Nimmo? No, he is not. Defensively, he is. Base running is. Offensively, he's not currently. And that is where the Mets need to make sure they do not lose out on. They have to find that offense somewhere if they can't comfortably find it in a trade for Robert. But as you guys see here, above league average in walk percentage, 62nd percentile, 93rd percentile in outs above average for the center fielder, 63rd in arm value, right around league average in arm strength, so not much of a noodle arm, and 90th percentile in sprint speed. All aspects that David Stearns is salivating out the mouth for a true defender that could be added to this outfield. And that is what is so appealing about someone like Robert. And that's why the Mets tried their hardest to land him at the trade deadline. But when you have the schmucks of the front office for the Chicago White Sox saying, listen, we need a Jonathan or a Brandon Sproat type in this state, like, miss me with that nonsense, okay? What is far more palatable and far more realistic is working a trade around Luis Angel Acuna being the core piece. Because as you guys see here, Michael Marino did mention how they really like Luis Angel Acuna. And let's face it, guys, as dominant as Acuna has looked in the Dominican Winter League right now, which is awesome to see, he already has more home runs in the Winter League than he did all this past season with the Mets on over 100 games for some context there. But he's also getting continued center field reps. So we know Acuna's an elite defender. We know he's fantastic at times a second. Can, I'm sure, be great in the outfield too. But how much value does he currently have in this Mets organization that is clearly doing everything in their power to box him out right now? So when you understand how Acuna is one of the odd man out currently, not someone that David Stearns drafted or acquired, because he was acquired under the Billy Epler regime there, and that trade for Max Scherzer 1-for-1 back when Acuna was a top prospect for the Texas Rangers. The point stands. You can maximize on his value now, give up some lesser assets, hopefully lesser, or around the realm of equal value. I think if the Mets want to trade Luis Angel Acuna and Mark Vientos for Luis Robert, that would make so much sense, because where does Vientos have an immediate role in his team? He ain't going to be our starting third baseman, nor is he a guy that you should comfortably give continued DH reps to, because I think that ship has kind of sailed this past year. The Mets need more certainty in DH, and Mark Vientos, as much as I love Mark and something personal, he's far from a certainty in what we're getting right now. The Mets could maximize the values of players that don't have minor league options left, specifically in the front of Mark Vientos. It doesn't matter that he has club control until like 2030. No minor league options means Vientos is a DFA away from being out of this organization by sometime next season. And the Mets would like to avoid that. How do you avoid that? By trading them away in a deal that actually makes sense. For Vientos, he could join them that White Sox team where he will have greater opportunity. Acuna could actually slot in, if not a second base option for them right away, then the center field replacement for Mr. Luis Robert, and they're spending pennies in doing so. So a White Sox team that knows that they have limited value with Robert after back-to-back down seasons, a guy who is picking up the bat tremendously, raked against left-handed pitching. That's something to bear in mind, guys. He was well above league average against left-handed pitching this past season. That's another thing that the Mets would be banking on. So if they want to go at all in a platoon setting, it would see Robert and bench to ease Benj in throughout the season. They could do that while maximizing Robert's value solely against southpaw pitching. Point stands, he was looking really good with the bat the final month leading into the trade deadline, and then everything started to fall down again. You want to know why things fell down again? It's because Robert was trying to get his trade value up, getting excited that he'd be joining a top contender of an organization. Instead, he stays in Southside Chicago where he knows he's not going anywhere, and color me shocked, he didn't perform all that well down the stretch because of it. Robert, I think, makes an abundance of reasons of sense in the right context of everything that we just relayed today. So you guys, again, let me know all your thoughts in the comments down below if you're for or against a Luis Robert trade. Like I said, I'm all for Robert, just at the right price and in the right circumstance. If you land him, but you don't do anything else of significance for the outfield, and you move lateral in the infield, which means you bring Alonso back, but you really don't do much more than that, then I'm going to be pissed off. Because in my opinion, the Mets are taking a step back and banking too much yet again on uncertainty, something that hurt them tremendously this past season, entering 2025 with a rotation that was filled with said uncertainty. So from rotation to now the offensive configuration, you got to make sure you're doing more than just Luis Robert. Now, going on from Luis, because we talked about him enough for already 20 minutes in the show. We got plenty more to deep dive in this one. I'll do my best to not be too long-winded here. Let's go on to the next topic, and that is what Michael Marino relayed here. A player to watch for the Mets this offseason is Eugenio Suarez. Depending on how Kyle Schwarber and Pete Alonso's free agent plays out this offseason, Suarez profiles as a solid potential DH option, and the team is looking to improve their offense. And I can also tell you guys in confidence, after doing some homework with my people, and they know who they are, it has been relayed to me that yes, the Mets do in fact view Eugenio Suarez as a very realistic DH option for them in the role where Pete Alonso doesn't return. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Not that I don't want Alonso to return, but if you ask yourself, Wardy, why can't the Mets sign both? Suarez played most of his games at third base this past year. This is true, but Eugenio Suarez is not known for his defensive upside all that much. As you guys can see here from his Baseball Savant page, this past season, splitting time with the Diamondbacks and the Mariners was so good with the Diamondbacks leading up to when he got traded. Then when he returned in Seattle, he fell off a cliff a bit with his production. It wasn't the same. But he was in the 9th percentile in outs above average, 29th in arm strength. And you want to know what the worst thing about this is for a third baseman? This is still far greater than what Mark Vientos gave us in a limited sample size this past season. And I'm not exaggerating. Vientos was statistically the worst defensive third baseman in baseball last year when he was out there. And I know it's not at all his fault. Mendoza poorly utilized him. When you have a guy play third base and then decide to not play him a couple days and then DH him, you can't expect a young, impressionable player to get consistently better at a position that he isn't consistently playing. Common sense, yet for the Mets, hard to fathom, unfortunately. Eugenio Suarez makes a lot of sense as a DH fit, especially when you bear in mind what his current projected value is right now that we are seeing in the market. And I'm going to talk more about Devin Williams in this quote here in a second, everybody. But I do just want to show you guys this from MLB Deadline News. This is according to Spotrac that I usually reference for contracts. Eugenio Suarez's free agent market value is currently at 2 years at roughly $30 million. So $15 million AAV, so the same contract that Jeff McNeil's essentially on, if not a little less, is what it would take for Eugenio Suarez. How could you not want that for a guy that's coming off of a 49 home run season, 118 RBIs? Yes, I know he batted .228, and yes, I know the on-base was just under 300. I know, though, he still was a roughly 4-WAR player, even while being defensively not sound, 25% above league average, was batting 40+% above league average when he was with the Diamondbacks before he got traded this year. So you have to wonder, how would he look in a Mets lineup like this that would obviously be very deep heading into 2026? And for me, I think Suarez would be a slam dunk DH fit for this team again if Alonso walks. Because going back to my initial point that I was stating, Wardy, why can't the Mets land Alonso and Suarez? And the answer is, Suarez is not a good third baseman. He's not a guy that you want there for the most part. And we know David Stearns wants to shore up this team defense, which means it would not make any sense to put him there. But Alonso, who the Mets would like to return, but aren't going to necessarily bend over backwards for him like they were not going to do an offseason ago either, they want Alonso back as someone who can play both first and DH. So how would Eugenio Suarez and Alonso make logical sense? Well, you could technically platoon Suarez with Beatty at third base should you not trade Beatty. And for the days that you have Beatty starting at third base, you have Suarez at DH with Alonso at first. And then for the days that you say have Alonso at DH, you can have a more defensively sound first base option that you may sign to a smaller contract in this market or trade, whatever the case may be. Or again, if you landed Cody Bellinger, that can make sense too, to get belly reps at first base for the times you wouldn't be in the outfield. But the point stands. It doesn't seem logical that the Mets are going to land a true DH type unless they allow Alonso to walk, like Kyle Schwarber, same exact circumstance. It just doesn't feel likely at this point in time, barring changes. So all I have to say is bring Alonso back, but if you do not bring the polar bear back, and if you say want to maximize every different aspect of this team offensively and defensively in a role where Alonso doesn't return, this is how you maximize the DH, okay? If you're not going to land Kyle Schwarber, Eugenio Suarez at that value, even entering his age 35 season, I think he'd be silly not to consider. Yes, he's very swing or miss. Yes, he's unbelievably feast or famine as a batter. But what Eugenio Suarez also is, and is something that I really admire about him, is that he is a guy that just consistently knows how to rake. And fittingly, that the last time that Suarez had a home run season of 49 home runs or more was 2019, where he came in second of Pete Alonso for the most home runs in the National League. It would kind of be crazy if all these years later, the Mets signed Suarez essentially as the power replacement after losing Alonso, because Alonso's seeking a longer-term contract. Suarez is shorter-term that should be able to give you very similar, if not same, power implementation. Yes, Alonso is a far more polished, well-rounded batter. There's no denying that, and he provides some value at first base, but the point stands, is that enough of a needle mover for the Mets to say, oh my God, like we have to land Alonso instead of considering Suarez on short term? And I really don't know the answer to that right now. But what I do know is that the Mets like Suarez quite a bit in the world where Alonso does in fact walk. And from everything that I can tell you in confidence right now, guys, Alonso's market is not good at the moment. It is shaping up eerily similar to how it did an offseason ago, even while not having the qualifying offer attached. One does have to wonder if that continues, are the Mets going to look out yet again and land Alonso on a shorter-term high AAV contract, even with the lockout feeling inevitable a year from now, where there's a further urgency by top free agents like himself and Alex Bregman to ink these long-term deals now while they still technically can? Again, the jury's still out, but what we do know is that the Mets have a lot of options. They're in the markets of a lot of players right now. We broke down the platform yesterday, how Jeff Passan linked the Mets with a whopping 13 different trade candidates to varying degrees. And we broke that all down the platform already. But Suarez, I like him. I've always been an admirer of his power implementation as a bat. Would love him as a true DH fit in a world where it was actually logical and makes sense. You guys let me know if you're for or against a potential Eugenio Suarez pursuit on a shorter-term high AAV contract. I mean, but again, 15 to tops 20 mil AAV for a couple years of Suarez is literally chump change for what you're getting in immediate power for this lineup. Again, very swing and miss, I understand, but this guy steadily sits 30-plus home runs or so a year. And again, 49 this past season in a walk year. Something to bear in mind, he's not going to put that up in Flushing, Queens all season. No doubt he'll not put that up, but still, that's all I got to say about that. So now, guys, let's go on from talking about Eugenio Suarez to talking about some other topics I want to break down for each and every one of you in this one, because it's not just regarding guys like Freddy, Peralta, who are going to have some more things to say about, but it's also some kind of miscellaneous topics, but regarded in Mets land that I feel the need that we should have a conversation on. And one of them, everybody, is the following from Will Salmon of The Athletic, as you guys can see here. In Mets player development, Kevin Malaha moves up to director of hitting, formerly Jeff Albert's role before joining the Major League staff. Malaha was previously Mets minor league hitting coordinator. So that's good to hear, because the Mets had major strides in their minor league hitting this past year, i.e. Jacob Reimer, AJ Ewing, just to name a few. Daniel, Nicholson? I'm going to say Nicholson, but I feel like it's Nicolason, I think. Previously a lower level coordinator, is now the hitting coordinator. So basically, now that Jeff Albert has moved up to the major league level, everyone that was just below him in previous roles also moved up in the organization, which makes sense. So nothing wrong with that. Not wrong at all. Also, everybody, we did see this little nugget from Andy Martino of SNY stating on Mets Hot Stove that the Mets do have a little bit more leverage over Diaz now, which I agree. And I'd be lying if I didn't tell you guys that there's a current industry belief that the Mets could find themselves kind of going against themselves in the sense of bidding. What I mean by that is maybe the Dodgers' interest isn't as significant as we think it is. I could be wrong in saying that. Obviously, I know the Dodgers would love someone like Edwin Diaz. I'm sure the Blue Jays would too. But this really feels like, again, it's for the Mets to lose in the sense of bringing Edwin Diaz back. Devin Williams is supposed to be their setup man through and through. We know how much Edwin wants to return. We know how much we want Edwin to return. So meet in the middle. If Edwin wants 5, if we're offering 3, meet in the middle on 4 years, let's say north of $90 million, including a bonus, and just get the job done already, okay? I've said it all along. Diaz has always felt like such a greater likelihood, to me at least, to return than P. Alonso for comparing and contrasting the two players. I also firmly believe that Edwin Diaz is the Mets closer for next season until we find out breaking news that he is signed elsewhere. So until that happens, I'm standing pretty confident on my belief that Edwin will return to this Mets team, and that's where I'm going to stand as of now. Now, beyond that, we did also see from Underdog MLB here, initially from Daniel Alvarez, reporting that Miguel Rojas has returned to the Dodgers on a 1-year contract. That's not what I'm here to talk about. What I'm here to talk about is the following, which is following the season, Rojas will remain in the organization in the player development department. What did I see right away when I saw this? And shout out to my friends on X for tagging me and even mentioning this too. Shout out to my guy Ray, who knows who he is. The Mets should do something eerily similar with Starling Marte. Seriously, they really should. I'm not just saying this because Juan Soto loves him and views him as a huge helping hand in him adjusting to the New York Mets this past season. But Marte, we know how amazing of a base runner he was and has been throughout his career. We know how much value he's brought on and off the field. I would love the idea if the Mets either hired Marte right now as someone who could impact the organization more on a coaching sense, or hire him, sign him on a 1-year contract, have him be a guy that's solely coming off the bench this year, not a guy you're relying for DH, solely someone for late game pinch hitting situations, or for every once in a while getting a start, maybe due to injury more than anything else, a veteran presence, and then after the season, have him stay in the organization in a coaching role in some form or fashion. I would love that. So that's why I'm relaying that now, because I can see the Mets going down a route like that, or at least I think that they should go down a route like that, the way that the Dodgers are smartly doing that with Miguel Rojas. And say what you will about Miguel Rojas, he's not a needle mover of a player, but he was in the clutch. And if it wasn't for Rojas, the Dodgers probably don't win the World Series thanks to his clutch home run there in the 9th inning or so. So you have to give credit where credit's due. And now another little thing to throw out there is that, yes, Mets legend said absolutely nobody, Cedric Mullins, is signing with the team that is perfect for him because he has no pressure whatsoever. He's back in the American League East. Will probably be traded to the Baltimore Orioles by the trade deadline if he wants to return home. And the Rays will, of course, try to maximize his value while trying to maximize his ability and more of a hitter's park half the season. He signs with Tampa on a 1-year contract. So Cedric Mullins, who looked like he was scared of his own shadow, his walk year was horrendous from the time that the Mets acquired him, could not handle the big market. Something him and Ryan Helsley had something in common, and now he, like Ryan Helsley, is landing back in the American League East with a small market team that has limited expectation in the sense of really what are you going to get out of them next season? The jury's still out. For the Baltimore Orioles, I have no clue because I thought the Orioles were going to be good this past year and they fell off a cliff. Why? Because you allow Corbin Burns to walk. I know he got hurt, but you still allow the man to walk. And then on top of it all, you don't do anything to supplement proper replacements in your rotation like thick-headed schmucks that you are. And then the Rays, we know how the Rays are. Rays are always going to be smart and savvy with their moves, but they're not going to be big spenders until they prove us otherwise. So that's what I got to say about that. Also, another quick topic, Devin Williams' official remarks from David Stern speaking on the Williams signing. Short and sweet and to the point, but there's something very important about this quote that I would like to highlight. David Stern states the following, and I quote, "Devin is a dynamic pitcher who will help bolster the back of the bullpen. He's an experienced arm with a proven track record pitching in high-leverage situations. We are excited to welcome Devin and his family to Queens." Now, what is notable about this quote? What word is not relayed once? Closer. Why was closer not relayed? Because Edwin Diaz is going to be in New York Met barring changes. Until he's not a Met again, until he's not a Met again, he's going to be a New York Met. I got to call it. I got to say how it is. But that's where I stand on that front. Now, guys, let's scroll up here a little bit. Let's also tell you guys briefly on the news that we saw earlier today as well. Kyle Tucker did, in fact, meet with the Toronto Blue Jays at their facilities there in Dunedin, or however you pronounce it, in Florida for their spring training facilities. So Kyle Tucker is officially on the prowl, checking out team facilities. Now it's just a matter of, will he be doing that with the New York Mets as well? Will he be doing that with some other top contending teams like the Dodgers? We'll just have to wait and see. But Tucker, who we would love, but we understand, there's only so much of a palate and appetite for a 10-year contract at what, $350 to $400 million is what's more than likely going to take to land the coveted outfielder. So I see a lot of pros and a lot of cons with someone like Kyle Tucker, and I did not mean to pull up Tatis stats. I apologize, everybody. Sometimes when I have my stat graphics, I have the wrong player in there because I'll be talking about one guy, and then I'll take that graphic out to put in someone else. But there's Kyle Tucker there, and Tucker, again, fantastic talent. I would love him in Flushing, Queens, but he also provides less versatility for the Mets in a world where they would sign him as an outfielder, whereas Bellinger is a night and day difference in his ability to be unbelievably versatile for you, which is why I've said it time and time again. I'll say it once more. Between the two players, if you're asking for my personal opinion, I think Cody Bellinger is far more realistic and likely to happen if the Mets are going to go for a big swing on a top outfield free agent this offseason. Because it's Tucker, it's Bellinger, and then it's a steady drop-off. They are basically the top two horsemen in this year's free agent class, barring changes. But nonetheless, Tucker is on the move, on the prowl, checking out Blue Jays facilities. And I'm telling you right now, if the Blue Jays land Kyle Tucker, they've already won the offseason, in my opinion, okay? Because they've already brought in Mr. Ponce on that 3-year contract, $30 million, which I love. He was the NPB for the Pampa Baseball League in Japan, MVP this past year with a sub-2 ERA, like 250 strikeouts. Dog looked really good with great adjustments. Velo is a couple miles per hour higher than what it was last time he was in the bigs there with the Pittsburgh Pirates, posting north of a 5 ERA, and pairing him as well as Dylan Cease with the upside that Cease has as a fantastic strike thrower. I think the Blue Jays are doing exactly what they should be doing for a team that got this close to winning a World Series. I commend them for their continued efforts. Let's see if they can actually go ahead and make this splash happen and bring back Bo Bichette. I'll be a little surprised if they can make that happen, but anything's possible right now. Now, this is the final piece that we're going to talk about today, everybody, before yours truly gets out of here. And that is, initially this morning, came out from Ken Rosenthal, The Athletic. I read the article when it first came out, or over this past morning, rather. And I didn't want to make a video on it right away because I knew that there was going to be a lot more topics in Metsland naturally throughout the day to pair with this, because that's typically what happens. If you guys are wondering why maybe I don't get to a certain topic right away when I'm notoriously known for like being the first to break a lot of news or talk about a lot of news that is breaking in Metsland, the reason why there's a delay is because A, I'm a father, so sometimes it's easier said than done to take time away from my family to then go ahead and do this. But secondly, and most importantly, this is a fact that in the course of the offseason, how it works is a lot of news comes out by certain times in the day specifically. So, for example, this article comes out at 8 or 9 a.m. Eastern, whatever the case may be. The Mets are inevitably going to have some form of news or rumblings come out by the time we get ourselves to like at least 3 p.m. Eastern and then onwards. So that's why a lot of the times these videos have dropped either early in the a.m. or really late night, technically midnight, so technically morning for you guys, there the same day or so. So that's what we have. But in this piece, he goes on to break down that, yes, the Brewers are in fact softening on trading Freddy Peralta. As a shock to absolutely nobody, the same idiot owner for the Milwaukee Brewers that was so confident saying, oh, we love having a pair of him and Brandon Woodruff. We love the look of our rotation. But you know what you love more? Pocketing the dollars of owners that actually have a willingness to spend like Steve Cohen, because you are in fact a schmuck, i.e. the Brewers and how they are ran. They are still a small market team. They're looking to shed payroll. They are in fact looking to have a payroll similar to last season, which is less than what they are currently projected to have right now. And in order to do so, they're going to maximize the value of Freddy Peralta. Why? Because as this article states from Ken Rosenthal, The Athletic, that you guys can of course check out whenever you guys get a chance to, he made it known that so many teams are calling for Freddy Peralta that they're basically having their hand forced that they have to really consider trading him. I mean, no duh. Peralta's going to walk after next season, bud. Maximize his trade value while you still can. And here's the thing. They're going to ask for a Kane's ransom for Freddy Peralta. And my response to that is, you give up that Kane's ransom as long as you can't find a better deal with another trade option. So if you can find a better deal for, say, a Joe Ryan, a Pablo Lopez, you're not going to find a better deal for Tarek Skubal. Let's call it how it is, obviously. But if you're able to find a better trade for an ace caliber starter or a starter with ace upside in this trade market than what the Brewers are demanding for Peralta, you go ahead and you do those alternatives, and there's nothing wrong with that. I'd be more than happy with one of those starters from the Twins. Absolutely. As long as you pair them with a free agent starter that you sign. One of Framber Valdez, Tatsuo Imai, and or Zach Gallen, Michael Cain. would prefer one of the first two versus the latter two, but nonetheless, the Mets need quality starting pitching depth. And Peralta's a stud. We know he is. I'm not here to pitch you on how good of a pitcher he is. We've said that a lot already the past week. Again, just under 180 innings this past season, dominated to a 2.7 ERA, and his walk year, mind you, at just $8 million. So, yes, you're going to have to give up a king's ransom. And yes, the Brewers would like controllable pitching in return. Wow, it's almost like the Mets have literally the best farm in baseball for young pitching prospects. That's not an exaggeration. They were ranked first in baseball this year in their farm when evaluating pitching. So from guys like Jonathan to Brandon Sproat to even Christian Scott returning from his reconstructive Tommy John surgery to even guys like Zach Thornton, Will Watson, Jack Weniger, RJ Gordon, Jonathan Santucci, the Mets have an abundance of MLB-esque ready starting talent or guys that'll be MLB ready by halfway through of next season, okay? So the Mets have more than enough assets to make a trade with the Brewers for Freddy Peralta happen. It really just comes down to how adamant is David Stearns on landing another former Brewer that he loved in Milwaukee like he just did by signing Devin Williams. Now, let's also not forget, how did Freddy Peralta land there in Milwaukee? Because he was traded for by, yes, David Stearns. David has always admired Freddy Peralta in his game, and Peralta has now blossomed in that true ace-caliber starter paired with Brandon Woodruff and that rotation. But the Brewers not only have a lot of great young pitching talent, as is, but the belief is that, let's say the Mets traded one of their top pitching prospects in a deal for Peralta, where the Mets would be adamant on extending Peralta beyond his one-year contract. That would be the whole point of acquiring him. Otherwise, it would just kind of a moot point if you go all in on a rental and then he walks after the season. That's not what the Mets would be trying to do. But if you land Peralta, can income on a long-term contract, just like what the Red Sox did with Garrett Crochet an offseason ago, which was fantastic for them. Very envious of that still to this day. But they had a deeper farm at the time, so it made sense as to why it happens. Then I think that this makes a lot of logical sense for the Mets. You just have to make sure that you don't give up too many assets to the Brewers where you move lateral in doing so, and the Brewers get much better when the Brewers just had a fantastic regular season. Nothing to show come postseason because that's usually the news with them, but the point stands. They're looking to compete. They're looking to be competitive, and they believe they can still be competitive in the National League Central even if they trade away their ace-caliber arm. So now it begs the question, what is it going to take for Freddy Peralta? When is he going to be traded? That is what we'll just have to wait and see on. But Mets fans, I would like to thank you guys all so much for watching. Please make sure to hit that like and subscribe button on your way in and on your way out if you guys have not done so already. I greatly appreciate it. And just please know how much I appreciate every single one of you guys for the endless support. Regardless of how late we're dropping this video, I know it's going to perform well as we get to the morning and then the next day because you guys are absolutely fantastic with your support. So again, thank you guys so much for everything. I greatly appreciate it. I'll see you all more than likely later on today breaking down more news and rumors. We may do a live stream this evening as well, depending on what's happening in Mets land. So to be determined on that front. Until then, though, folks, have a great rest of your night, day, evening, whenever you're watching this. Let me know all your thoughts on the following topics down below. Check out SeatGeek, Wardy10 for 10% off your next ticket purchase. This is your guy, Wardy, signing out. Let's go Mets, baby. Peace out, everybody.